Hello. Hi,
Hello,
Dave.
hey Sri, hey everyone.
Hi, everyone. Firstly, Dave, very grateful for having you here. You are a legend to us in B2B marketing, and it's always been great interacting with you. Thanks a lot to come on Factors.ai live with us and talk to us. So, Firstly, I think we'll just start with a brief introduction. I do have some nuggets from your personal history and your career
Oh,
history to ask you about, but I would really like to get an introduction from you on both inflection.io and about yourself. I'll also just briefly talk about factors.ai and then we can go.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here on this LinkedIn Live, and thanks everyone who's watching right now. Yeah, I'm Dave Rigotti. I am co-founder and head of the marketing team here at Inflection.io. We're a marketing automation platform for the modern data stack. So we connect into Salesforce like you'd expect marketing automation to, but then have like super robust integrations with like data warehouses and CDPs like Segment, and we're powering growth in marketing campaigns and even product and onboarding campaigns for some product-led companies that everyone would know. And yeah, I started out my marketing career in working at Microsoft for a few years, and then joined Visible when it was a little baby company. I think I was employee number 6, and we took that from zero to an awesome exit with Marketo and Adobe 5 years later. And it's cool to see the attribution space really grow and expand and turn into something that we always knew it would in 2013, but it was such a new space and a new term that it took a long time to get there. And so anyways, excited to talk go to market. Thanks for having me on.
That's great. Thanks a lot for the introduction, Dave. Uh, Hello, everyone. Thanks a lot for being on Factors.ai LinkedIn Live. Very briefly about myself and Factors.ai. Sri here, I'm one of the founders at Factors.ai. We are 45 plus team, almost 200 plus customers now. We are a little over 3 years old. What we solve for is B2B pipeline generation. How we do that is with account intelligence, attribution, and activation. So we identify which accounts are the ones right from your ad channels to your website to your CRM are the ones which matter for you, where they come from, how they come from, and then attribute activities, marketing activities to how they can be nurtured, and then activate them accordingly. That's how we generate more pipeline with 200 plus customers. That's what Factors.ai does. But in this talk, we are here with Dave Rigotti. And while Dave was quite humble about his career, right from Microsoft to a Visible, head of marketing at Visible, and then exit to Marketo first, and then from Marketo to Adobe, and later starting up with Inflection.io. But Dave is a B2B marketing legend, and he has seen through marketing right from the Bing ad days and maybe 15 years back all the way into attribution space and B2B marketing, right from how attribution evolved from a totally unknown category to a category creation point of view from there, then to an exit into a marketing powerhouse, which is Marketo, then an exit to an even more bigger gorilla, which is Adobe, running ABM there, and then with starting with Inflection.io. So that's a lot of learning to have in one LinkedIn Live, apart from also what his thoughts are in the modern GTM. So I'll get into one by one couple of things which we can pick Dave's brain on, and then we can start talking about it. So Dave, one thing which I was very curious about in terms of B2B marketing and how you started with, how was it in 2013? I mean, 2023, we have seen the market evolve and over multiple cycles. I think there'll be at least 2 cycles in the last 10 years, which is there. But how was B2B marketing in 2013 when you started off with Visible?
Yeah, 2013 was interesting for me because I went from working at Microsoft, which is,
Mhm.
we like to think of Microsoft as a very consumer driven company. You think of Windows, you think of Office, you think of Bing, Xbox. But a lot of the company and a lot of the revenue comes from BDV. So I went from these like Fortune 500, very
Mhm.
kind of like sales team led B2B experience, very like field marketing led, very much like how do we support regions and reps to B2B marketing at Visible, which in 2015 we were very, very young company, just kind of getting started. We'd raise a very kind of small round, big in those or big or average in those days, but a small round in these days. And so we were starting to go do something with it. We were like very adamant. A good approach was inbound marketing. So we spent a lot of time on creating content, getting the classic inbound playbook, right? Like generate some content, put it behind a gated forum and grow. And we played that playbook for all 5 years where we were in kind of growth mode. And we added BDRs in like late 2014. We started a BDR team, and now, well, I mean, we'll talk about what changes now, but we wish we would have started a BDR team like way earlier. When we exited, we had like 40 BDRs out of a team of 120, and this is like in 2018. Then we saw like just awesome returns with like a really well-armed BDR team and a really well-supported BDR team from a marketing perspective. So we started out with like very much inbound playbook, and then layered up starting in like 2014 BDRs and ABM. And by like 2015, we were like very, very kind of ABM focused with content like creation still being core, because a lot of people still hadn't heard about attribution in 2014. They were just like, I don't get it. We get some like, we can do hidden fields with our forms. Like, how is that different from what you guys do? And so we spent a lot of time on like education to kind of support the market.
That's true. How has, while that would have been starting with the basic content gating and then starting with BDRs and other this thing. And while 10 years down the line, you would have seen quite a few LinkedIn posts. It's like, okay, content shouldn't be gated. Or can we do something else without content gating? Or BDR's email is dead, so there shouldn't be any kind of reach outs. And there is a social and other this thing. How do you compare these statements or this thing? Is it is there a shift which is happening, or it's just more like kind of a contrarian thoughts being put around which is happening?
Yeah, I don't know, like to each his own. I still deploy the same model that we did at Visible for a lot of our stuff today, like gated content, very targeted LinkedIn ads, drive leads, work those leads, convert them over to sales opportunities. And it still works well, works great. So for us anyways, that model still plays out. We don't do really outbound at Inflection. In fact, we actually don't do outbound. I think outbound's so much harder now than it used to be. And I mean, you do see the stats that are like SDR, BDR efficiency, effectiveness is like way down starting like 2018. And I've seen that, and that's like a true statement. So I don't think the like inbound playbook, LinkedIn ads, get a content, I don't think that's like a tired playbook. I think it works really well to give great content to the people that you like want to see it. Maybe like batch blasting, sending messages to get people to notice your products, like kind of borderline worked for a long time, and it's maybe not working as much as it used to. And now you see like new stuff start to pop up, like let's product led growth. Let's get people into the product and or into sales tours or like interactive demos or something. So there's always new offers. I'm a big advocate of, at least for us, content, and of course product led growth, like getting people into your product to experience what you have, if that is if your product can support that model.
Well, that's awesome. It's one good thing, great to hear, like the fundamentals and the tactics remain more or less the same, at least for you, the way you have used it. Maybe there are some more new tactics, but it's not something like we are junking the old tactics totally away in terms of creating good level content, creating targeted ads and ABM and other thing, focusing on your buyer personas and other thing. That's something which is not changing, and that's refreshing to hear as well. And where like we do hear quite a few interesting, or I would say contrarian, but more importantly, a lot of new marketing gurus coming in and giving a lot of out of the box or totally different viewpoints, which can put a lot of budget astray, and people can get confused as well in terms of what's happening.
Yeah. You should always be testing though,
Mhm.
like what's working and what's not, and then just keep doubling down on the things that are working.
That's great. So now coming back to the current system, Dave, one thing which, of course, the market has changed. It's not
Yeah.
2021. 2021 was a great year, or not just in terms of funding. There was a lot of money flowing in, but a lot of companies were there. Everyone was willing to buy. There was huge optimism. And over the period in 2023, I've been just looking at stocks, whether it's like HubSpot is at 10 times revenue, Microsoft, saying Freshworks, which is maybe 8 times revenue, or maybe 9 times revenue, which is there. So all companies' valuations have just got crumpled. And that's also shows in terms of like the sales momentum has reduced, sales velocity has reduced, and there is like sales targets or pipeline targets, people are not meeting it, which is there. And is this the kind of a new normal which we need to work on, or how do you kind of like, as a marketer, how what would be your advice to other fellow B2B marketers, and how do we tackle this market, or how do we go
Yeah.
ahead on this market?
I don't know if it's so much as like new normal as like this was
Mm-hmm.
the always the normal. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know if comparing 2023 to 2021 is it would look like wow, things are crazy now, but
Mm-hmm.
I mean from 2013 to 2020 or yeah, this is like how it is. Like so I think a lot of people made a lot of shifts, especially like 2021, like late 2020, 2021, on
Mm-hmm.
like, let's just go after more like
Mm-hmm.
very acquisition based demand generation, very acquisition based marketing. Revenue was, or money was easier to come by. Let's just go spend it and go grow, and probably less discipline, if you will, on the like classic like field marketing, sales acceleration, sales win rates
Mm-hmm.
than I've seen in the past, and I think that's changing. And then pretty much no marketers that I've seen. Well, I'll say this. I'll put it positively. The best marketers that I see are like spending a lot of time thinking about like NRR and expansions of revenue and not just
Okay.
acquisition. And so most SaaS marketers are very focused on acquisition and getting net new pipeline and net new revenue growth. And then kind of gas got poured on that fire for 2021. And it just kept growing, and now we got to get more disciplined about those sales velocity metrics, the win rates, for sure. And that's how it's always been. But I think the best are realizing that you have to go way further than that and think about how do we expand our current customers and how do we have great NRR, and that there's a lot of low hanging fruit there.
Oh, that's pretty good. One other thing which you also mentioned, which was kind of made me think, you were telling about like SDR and the BDR game or outbound is a lot more difficult now than what it is earlier. And outbound is typically an acquisition game, which is there.
Yeah.
Uh, from your point of view, and both including what Inflection does for its customers, how would you tackle this, where like one, at one stage, yes, there is not much money available. Second, outbound is also becoming very, very difficult. Where are the avenues to grow?
What was that question?
Where are the avenues to grow? Where would you actually put in your money, or where would you yourself trying to find ways to grow, which is there? Maybe one part is like, maybe as you suggested, increasing NRR, but how would you
Yeah.
actually go about that?
I think if you've never had a BDR, if you have a good
Mhm.
customer count and you've never had a BDR kind of put on customer expansions,
Mhm.
just move some BDRs to go do that. A lot of companies will think about NRR or customer marketing from like an advocacy perspective. Like, how do we make our customers our champions, and how do we support them, and how do we build goodwill with our brand?
Mhm.
I think that's great. I see nothing wrong with that. I think it needs to go further, and customer marketing needs to be customer marketing and lifecycle marketing needs to be almost like demand gen-y. Like, okay, great. Like, what's our target account list for our customers? How are we going to expand them? Go one by one. Like, what are the plays we're doing to go get more business from them, and what do we need to go do? And it needs to be this like methodical like thing, just like you do in demand gen. Like, how much pipeline are we creating? What's our target? Like, what's our plays? What are we going to go do to do that? And one easy one is like, if you have a million ARR and you have 25 BDRs, like go put a handful of them on customer expansions, and there's money there for sure. If that's not something that you've been like,
Got
really
it.
methodical about before.
Got it. Also, just stepping aside a little bit, I want to learn a little more on some of the use cases where inflection.io comes in from a marketing automation perspective and also a differentiated marketing automation perspective, specifically from your experience from Marketo. Given
Yeah.
that you had seen the whole journey of Marketo is the leader in marketing automation, and you have been there, you have worked there, and then at Adobe. And what made you start inflection.io, and what are the specific use cases which you can bring in inflection.io as well?
Yeah. Yeah. Marketo and Adobe was a great place to work for me. It was a good part of my time. And Adobe was very early and good about taking care of employees during, the chaos that was early COVID. So I have no ill will against Adobe at all. And Marketo is a great product that's supported and built such an awesome category. Um, so I left Adobe in December 2020 and just embarked on like a roadshow to just go talk to people. So I probably spoke with 150 companies. Half of them ended up being product led, and just really open questions like, what's a big challenge with you? And like, what are the things that you're trying to go solve for? And, what are the biggest limiting factors for your growth? And like, what are your big pain points? So just really like nothing about marketing automation. And it was really just business discovery to go figure out like, what should we build? And honestly, like almost every product led company that we spoke to said, hey, it's really hard to action with any of our product data. So the team is collecting a lot of great data on kind of what the users are doing in their product. They're collecting with like a CDP like segment, and maybe they're getting in a data warehouse too. And we want to be able to go do things with that because, you know, um, today, they're sending like onboarding sequences out of Marketo, and it's every 24 hours. The user gets a new email, and that's about as advanced as they're getting. And so we're like, okay, you know what? We know some things about this. Let's go take a look at it. So we were encouraged to kind of go start Inflection by the market, really. And so we built out Inflection as a marketing automation product. What's different is there's a lot that's different, but one of the things that's core is it's really built for modern data or essentially product-led companies today. We're by far the best way to communicate with your existing customers. So the use cases that most of our customers start with is like onboarding. So moving from an onboarding sequence that sends every 24 hours to like an onboarding sequence that's like based on that user's product behavior. So if they've already done step number 3, don't send them an email the next day to ask them to do step number 3. Just send them step number 4. Or if they haven't done step number 2, instead of sending them an email to do step number 3, kind of send them another email to do step number 2, things like that. And then tons of like revenue expansion campaigns too. Like you go and it looks like you can have an email from an AE that's like, hey, I saw that you were trying to set up SSO. That's not part of your plan. It's part of our enterprise tier, but hey, click here. Let's get some time, and I'm happy to show you what else you can get out of the enterprise plan. And so really like driving automated growth, automated revenue, like, hey, you reach your threshold, click here to upgrade campaigns, but also like bridging the gap between product-led and enterprise. So those are the classic use cases for Inflection. And a lot of customers start with onboarding first. And that's also like an awesome way to go drive more revenue for your company without having to change your product. And it's probably like a very low hanging fruit opportunity for most companies.
Oh, it's interesting. I think one thing which I also caught on was like what inflection does, and also the larger point what you made around like existing customers. There is a much it's a one, a low hanging fruit, and second, there is the immense opportunity for you to nurture them and actually get more revenue out of them. And that's
Yeah.
something which most products don't do, because they have so many features, they have so many aspects about what they can solve for, but maybe existing customers are using a sliver of the product or maybe a couple of features only. And if we can nurture them in the right way without being annoying or without having a kind of a random set of demos which can go into them and not or not into the right persona, it can be a huge revenue creation opportunity. And that's where inflection.io sits as well. So that's pretty interesting. One
Yeah,
more
the
thing.
best marketing teams are thinking about like expansion and
Mhm.
churn in like a methodical way, and also like product adoption as part of that too. How do we get more users at certain companies using our product, even if it's not like a seat based thing? Like more users might not equal more revenue. That's fine, but they're way less likely to churn. You also create way more advocates for what your product does when you do that. And when customers don't adopt, they churn. And now you went from like now you have less revenue that you have to go work way harder to make up for with net new acquisition, but you also have like a negative brand sentiment in the market. So
That's
yeah, there's a lot of like follow-on effects to not doing product onboarding and being focused on like adoption and expansion.
So one thing is this more of a automation use case or automation use case filled into a customer success use case?
Yeah, I don't know. I think like uh customer, I think probably both. I mean, it depends on so many companies. Success should certainly be like using tools to look at their book of business and do like to manage their book of business. Where we fit in and where like automation fits in is like either air cover across all accounts,
Mhm.
um, or uh, or the accounts that are like unowned by CSMs. But certainly like CSMs can't like generally drive product onboarding, but they could
Mhm.
support like upgrades to the enterprise plan. And so we see sometimes like deployment of our software to go create alerts for the CSMs. Like instead of emailing the prospect or the customer to upgrade, email the
Mhm.
CSM and say, hey, like here's some details about this account. Here's what they've been doing in their product, and basically give them a script to go reach out. So we have some customers that deployed stuff like that.
No, no, totally makes sense. Actually, in Factors.ai, I have a separate Slack
Yeah.
channel, which basically tells me if any of my existing customers or the thing either comes to my pricing page or my case study page or look at any of my new LinkedIn ads, etc., we get an alert. The reason why we do that is like if the existing customer is one either looking at the pricing page, it means like either he's one worried about the pricing, or two, it might be like he wants to move up to the next plan. He might need some help. Second is the same thing is like, is he looking at any of our blogs? Is he looking at any of our case
Yeah.
studies? Is he looking at this thing? Which means it's a great trigger for the customer success person to now go and talk to them to have a general conversation of upselling, saying that you are using this specific set of use cases, this feature part. Why don't you move on to the other feature part? These are the customers who have been using it. That works very well. One other thing which we are also, I mean, at our side, while you are looking at the notification and the automation side of it, where we work on is more from an ads perspective, where
Yeah.
like, how do we advertise in different channels, whether it's in G2 or whether it's in LinkedIn, which is totally outside the platform of website or the existing first party data which is there, to get the attention of your customers and your prospects. And so that when they see that ad in those kind of places, they react to it, but they don't react immediately by coming into the website. Unlike B2C, they see it, it's like something like seeing a great billboard. Once they see the billboard, it's like, okay, this makes sense. Later, maybe when they come into the conversation, either using the product or later when they have a demo call or when they have after a couple of weeks, when they come to the website, they get, or they need a specific, they have a specific problem, they come to the website at that point in time and tracing that journey, that works very well. And I'm able to see that parallel, while this would be even more greater in a PLG led company where like you're continuously using the product and there is always a scope for you to upgrade in this
Right.
sense.
Yeah, right. And a lot of triggers for intent beyond, like the website too. Like somebody trying to use a feature that's not in their plan is like a
Mhm.
great like you should obviously very quickly reach out to them. Like we know from content downloads, like you have to reach out to a content download in like 10 minutes to get the best value. Like if you're like once a month going through your list, or even once a week, or even once a day, and saying which of my customers were trying to try features not in their plan, you're way too slow. Way too slow. And so like when companies start thinking like that, like we need to reach out right away when somebody's trying to use a feature that's not part of their plan, and have a methodical campaign to like have a discussion with them and get them in pipeline. It unlocks a ton of value. Ton of value.
I'm able to totally see it. Given that now we ourselves are at 200 customers, I can see how some
Yeah.
of this can be valuable, because it's impossible, humanly impossible, for someone to reach out
Yeah.
immediately when something happens, and better
Yeah.
for a rule engine to take care of it, and also systematically how you build on that rule engine to make that work is something which can be very interesting for you.
Yeah. Right.
That's interesting. Uh, Moving away from the product and also from the use cases, this is more from a general GTM problems which we have seen marketers face. We ourselves as B2B marketers also face, and then there are so many other of our clients who keep talking about, like, okay, they have one extended targets. The targets have increased, the budgets have reduced. Second, you have a lot more constraints. The market is also kind of slowing down in sales velocity and other this thing. Given your experience both as a product marketer, CMO, and later ABM marketer and other this thing, what we want to understand is, like, kind of like, as a senior leader, how would you structure or process this? Kind of like process means, like, what I'm trying to understand is, like, how would you go about saying that these are the kind of problems which you have? uh, how do we structure it? Like, how do you want to increase your pipeline? How do you want to increase your revenue? How do you want to increase your cost efficiency, etc.? How do you set these ambitious goals but also follow through on achieving these ambitious goals? How would you look at it as a B2B marketer with your
Yeah.
experience?
Yeah. The classic bottoms up versus tops down like forecasting question. Any marketer that's like, oh, we do just a bottoms up forecast, like either like a bootstrap or profitable company, or your CEO just hasn't given you the tops down forecast yet. I'm a big fan of like starting with the CEO's tops down forecast, like, hey, we're at 10 million ARR, we need to grow 80%. This is what we think churn's going to be. So, we need to go get 9 million more in ARR, and then working backwards from there of, what pipeline do we need to generate by what month to do that? And then what are the sources of that pipeline by channel? And then what's it cost to deliver that by each channel? And then understanding, of course, with that, like, if you are spending $1 million a year on LinkedIn ads and you're getting 1,000 leads out of it or whatever, if you go spend another $1 million on LinkedIn ads, you're definitely not getting another 1,000 leads on it. Like understanding the diminishing returns of each channel, and a good like demand gen leader is going to be able to whip this up in like at least the first stab in the first in a day. And so I think there's a lot you can do there, and almost always what comes out is you need like 2 times more pipeline today,
Mhm.
October 24th, to hit your goals for Q1 than you have. And so then you start to get into like, all right, let's pull down the Q1 like a little bit and let's put it towards Q4, and let's really think about like what do we need to go do to deliver. That's how I've always done forecasting, and that's and like goal setting, and that's there's always a conversation too with the CEO about with him or her about the realities of some things, but generally they're like not going to change based on like whatever you say. So you start thinking about like clever ways or big bets to kind of go make some changes. And I think leaning into customers, and I don't mean like in a bad way, I just mean like leaning marketing into expansions is an easy thing to go do. And you probably have 95% of your budget, 95% of your attention on acquisition. Shift it 80-20 on acquisition expansion. Maybe even like I see a lot of companies now getting to like 60%, excuse me, 60% expansion, 60% acquisition, 40% expansions. But if you're like 95-5, go make some changes there. And then also, I've seen some cool stuff driven by like go-to-market teams. Like Sendoso is a really cool example. They're a very sales-led company. They made kind of a small tiger team to launch Sendoso Express, where anyone can kind of go sign up for this product without having to talk to the sales team. And now they kind of open up like a whole new revenue channel of smaller SMBs that couldn't afford the main Sendoso product, or a good way to get people in, get some revenue from them, and then upgrade them later. And so I'm a fan of what Sendoso has done kind of with
Oh,
Sendoso
yes.
Express, and adding on a really cool offering on a product-led offering on a sales-led company, without having to like pivot the company to being product-led.
It's actually Krish at Sendozo is amazing, and the way they have thought about the category and how they are now, given the times and given that where budgets are constrained, now they have opened up a totally new revenue channel on SMB. That's a great example as well. But one interesting, far more interesting thing which you also mentioned was like how you can shift budgets, and generally maybe first time marketers or marketers, as they're going through a couple of cycles, they push a lot more budget into acquisition with much very low budget or less than 5% or 5% of the budget into retention, and that's something which can be changed into 60/40. What do large companies do? Let's say I'm talking about companies which are more than $10 million Series C and companies which are more than $100 million in revenue. How do they pitch their marketing budget? Is it something like how much is it for new logo acquisition? How much is it for retention?
I mean, so this like discussion on channels, like a top-down forecast, and then taking that by month, like start with the end date. This is where you need to be. Break it down by month, and then break it down by channel. So you basically build out a spreadsheet with the columns and then the rows. The columns being months, the rows being channel. Like that's how we did forecasting too at and like basic mixed modeling at Marketo. So I think it's not even a small company thing. I think it's a big company thing too. I mean, like we were well beyond 100 million ARR and pretty big marketing budgets and doing the same thing. Now pretty much all of Marketo's efforts, or our efforts on Marketo, were for acquisition, and very kind of little on like customer expansions. Marketo was a pretty like nascent or immature on like that motion.
Got it.
So anyway, that's like a regret I have in my career, was when I did ABM, it was 100% net new pipeline was my goal always. And never have taken anything until inflection on like expansions and NRR, and like truly appreciating, what marketing can do for NRR.
Makes sense. One more thing, in terms of where do marketers go wrong generally, especially early stage marketers, I can say, like, is it budget allocation, or is it planning, or is it kind of overspending on a couple of channels? Where do they go wrong?
Yeah, I don't. I think I don't know. I think there's probably I don't know where people go wrong. There's so many ways you can go wrong. I think there's always, at least with me, there's always like a grass is greener with like a different tactic or a different strategy. Like, everyone's like getting content. Should we go do that? It's like you can spend a lot of time testing that out and it maybe doesn't work. What's worked really well for me is just spending time on the things that's working and doing them better, and then leaving a little bit of time for like trying some new things. But I think a lot of the SaaS playbook still is pretty proven, still works pretty well. And I think, kind of stay focused on some of those, and doing those really well is helpful. It takes way longer than you think to do any channel really well. And it's almost always better, if you're really early stage, to pick like one or two things and do them really well, or like one or two channels and do it really well, than try to go do everything you're going to be doing when you're at 5 million AR or 10 million AR, and trying to do like the 20% good for all of those usually doesn't work out. And it's usually better to be what's the one or two things we're going to do really well and have a great experience by or with than doing 10 things kind of okay.
No, that's interesting. I think one of the ways how you put it is basically where people go wrong is lack of patience. They don't pick couple of channels, spend enough time on it, and this thing, and maybe FOMO, where like they see something or new shiny tool or a new shiny strategy which they hear about either on
Yeah.
LinkedIn or some podcast. They go after that. They spread themselves too thin, and then they go. Things doesn't happen, and that's simple as it gets, but I guess sometimes it's basically biting your tongue and staying patient for some time.
Basically, like if you're like, I'm gonna start a podcast, it's like, okay, you need to do a podcast every week for 3 years before you're gonna see meaningful returns. So you need to do 150 episodes. And so
Mhm.
this is gonna take 20% of your time for 3 years. And it's like, that's just like any content marketing. And so you need to be like, is this worth it? And you might be like, totally, let's go do it. Or you might be like, actually, no, maybe we need to not think about what's generating pipeline 3 years from now. You need to think about what's going to be generating pipeline 6 months from now. And so maybe not a podcast isn't the right thing, even though it scales great. Maybe you should go focus on like field marketing.
Hmm. Field marketing or a community or just basic content, creating good
Yeah.
sales marketing material. And I think, yeah, that makes a lot of sense in terms of prioritization and also knowing how long it would take for something to work out. It's not something like even as simple as an ABM strategy or even implementing a Rollworks or a Six Sense. That would also take a long time for it to come through.
Yeah.
That's great. Anyways, we are almost at the end of the LinkedIn Live, and I think we have two announcements to make. One is the Factors.ai and Inflection. Both of us are on the spotlight for GTM Partners Emerging Tech event. It's going to be launched in another 2 days. We are very, very excited to be one along with you and also with 15 other great MarTech companies in this, where like how new MarTech technologies are coming in and how they can kind of revolutionize or accelerate pipeline and sales for B2B companies, which is there in the market over the next decade. So that's something which is very, very exciting for all of us to be. Any thoughts from you on this, on the B2B GTM Partners event?
Yeah, excited to be participating in it.
Mhm.
I'm gonna be speaking on Thursday, doing a short little overview of Inflection and a demo.
Mhm.
And I think it's fantastic what Sangram and the GTM Partners team has been doing. Filling a great void that's come out in the market in the last couple of years on creating great content and thought leadership and benchmarks around kind of go-to-market models. And I think Sangram says pretty often, like, you don't have a marketing problem, you don't have a sales problem, you don't have a success problem, you don't
Mhm.
have a product problem, you have a go-to-market problem. And I think that's super true. So excited what they're doing and excited to be part of it.
That's great. We are also excited. My co-founder will be doing the demo as well, so that's something which we are all looking forward to. One other thing is, of course, is like we are also launching a new talk series, which is fundamentally around GTM problems, road to pipeline and revenue. That's something which we'll be talking about. Inflection of IO will of course be on the second episode of it, and we are having a planned a series of episode, at least 24 of them over a period of time, to talk about multiple GTM problems which B2B marketers face. And that's something which we are also excited on launching in from November onwards. So happy to have you there as well, Dave. That's it.
I'm excited for it. Thanks for putting it
Yeah,
together.
sure. Thanks a lot, Dave. Uh, Thanks everyone. Thanks for being part of this LinkedIn Live. I know it's a holiday in India and it's also a little kind of early in the morning in US. And I think thanks a lot for making time to come here and join us. We'd also put the live recording and also put snippets of this both in our YouTube channel and also share the content of that in the blogs and other things as well. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.